welcome everyone to the Anthony and Todd Show, a weekly podcast that critiques and memes music. I'm your host, Vincent Thomas Short, aka far from Ozzy Osbourne again.
Well, yeah, he's in Britain. He's across the pond. We're all pretty far away from him right now. Well, unless you're one of our viewers from Britain, in which case you're much closer than us.
I think he lives in America.
Does he now?
Doesn't he? I thought he did during the Osbourne era.
Oh.
I don't remember. I watched that show a lot as a kid, but I don't have any memories about it.
Where does Ozzy Osbourne live? Los Angeles. Okay, so it's in America, but it's on the wrong coast, so still pretty far away. My joke stands.
Well, everything's far away when you have a hollow inside and a deep depression.
I'm so far away.
I hate you. And I'm joined by my ever-attentive co-host, my best friend, my pal, my amigo, my Drew, Jonathan.
AKA King Krule is my main in Smash. It's not actually my main. My main is Kirby, but King K. Rool was my second pick.
No, I think you mean King Krule.
King Krule is my second pick.
This is episode 131 of the Anthony and Todd Show, an episode we would like to call Man Alive, more like Man in an Existential Crisis.
That's me.
Today we're going over a ton of new releases from the likes of
Ford. It's not a ton.
It's a ton to me.
A ton is 2,000.
I hate you. Grimes with Miss
Anthropocene?
Anthropocene. That's what I was gonna say. I know how to pronounce things.
No, you don't.
I good read. I read good. Ozzy Osbourne with Ordinary Man. King Krule with Man Alive, and finally Wrekmeister Harmonies with We Love to Look at the Carnage. No, We Love to Look at Carnage. Carnage, the producer that made the EP with Young Thug.
I thought they were talking about Carnage. He's going to be in Venom 2.
Oh, Venom.
I mean, that's going to be a weird ass. I don't know.
I want the music to be Carnage.
Can they get Machine Gun Kelly to do that soundtrack and just reignite
that would be funny. Before we start, if you want to follow the Anthony and Todd Show, I don't know why you would, but if you want to, you can find us at social media at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Anthony and Todd. You can find us at youtube.com/The Anthony and Todd Show if you're listening in audio form. You can find us at Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher, and Podbean. If you're watching in video version and you want to listen to the audio version, you type Anthony and Todd Show in your favorite podcast service. You can also find us up on Patreon at patreon.com/The Anthony and Todd Show if you want to support us monetarily. Without any further ado,
if you're tired of looking at our faces, which I wouldn't blame you, you can listen to us in podcasts.
Or you can just shut your eyes and listen to this while you go to sleep. Here's some soothing music. Here's some soothing nature noises. You are now asleep. Good night. Are you ready to get into this latest Skepta album?
Yes.
Time to go over Grimes' latest album, Miss Anthropocene. I can't read that. That's one of those words where I can't look at it.
Yeah.
Anthropocene.
Yeah,
it's like there's just too many vowels in it and it makes me uncomfortable. Kind of like how Grimes makes me kind of uncomfortable just because I find her weirdly pretentious.
Grimes, I've been trying to figure out for years now why Grimes and Elon Musk got together. I've come to a conclusion. Based upon Grimes' like pretension and her weird like I'm so different aesthetic, and then Elon Musk and his fucking smoking weed. What I've come to the conclusion is these two are those two kids in high school who are both really fucking nerdy, but thought they were just the coolest shit ever, and were just really kind of awkward and just weird to be around.
You want
and they're dating because it makes sense. This is that weird anime girl and that weird guy who tried way too hard to be cool. From high school, they never grew up, and now they're dating. And
I don't like digging into a relationship because I don't think it's super important.
It isn't.
But in my opinion, why they're together is Grimes really talks about robotics and like artificial intelligence, but also like
going to Mars.
No, not going to Mars, but
like in recent, like not
like
music,
Ghost in the Shell issues. So like transhumanism and stuff like that, where it's at what point are you human?
Shit that really doesn't matter when like.
We don't have those issues.
We don't have AI. We don't have.
But like, let me progress forward. I don't want to get into that too much. We'll talk about that a little bit later if it pops up. But two answers. Good answer, the correct answer, she wants to make a sex robot that's conscious. 2, because Elon Musk has the resources and the money.
Yeah.
2, she wants to turn herself into a robot. That's the bad answer because it's not as fun. Sex robot all the way.
Always fun. But also she's like talked a lot in real life about how like her main like goal in life is to go to Mars, which is also like Elon Musk's main goal.
So she's pregnant currently, and I read a snippet, just a small teeny bit, and she described how her setting up her future presence was going to be like animated and stuff, which I think gets into weird territory I don't really like, because like while I like animated characters or like animated acts like the gorillas, there's a human aspect to it. Damon Albarn.
Yeah.
And
but like they're also like not just animating a real person, they're like fictional characters.
Yeah.
With just like a human person behind it all. It's kind of like, why would, if Metalocalypse was a band, why would I give a shit about an animated TV show about Metalocalypse? They're much more interesting because they're just a fake band that's an animated TV show, not a real band. I don't, like, if Gorillaz was, like, all just a bunch of real people who decided to make animated versions of themselves, that's inherently less interesting than one guy making a fake animated band.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like the... I don't want to talk about this too long because we got to get into this album at some point, but I just don't like the concept of animated acts, or like acts that aren't real, that are just homogulated. Because like Gorillaz, you have that one, on the animation you have that one forefront. I forget his name, Jamie something, and then on music you have Damon Albarn, the one forefront. But like everything goes through them. They collaborate with a lot of people, but everything funnels through them through their visions.
Yeah.
But like when you just create an animated figure on your own, I'm not gonna say Grimes is planning on doing this or anything like that. This is just a segue to talk about other things. Yeah. When you create an animated figure on your own and like homogenize a bunch of different viewpoints of that, I don't like that. That scares me.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And I don't know if it's K-pop or J-pop. There's an artist that is animated.
Like the hologram ones?
Yeah, something like that.
I don't a genre though, and that's kind of going around with like the same like idea of like creating a fake act, but not like.
But that's all homogenized. Yeah. It's not really run by one person. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too familiar.
But that's still like inherently more interesting than like a real act who then becomes animated. Like you're already a real act. What do you really gain by turning yourself into a cartoon character? Like it's not a fake character to represent something, it's a real character who's just now animated. Like what the fuck's the point? And it's just weird, and it just feels very pointless.
I don't know. I think it could have a point whether it's based on the project or not.
I don't know.
But I think the bigger issue is that's your long living representation of yourself. When the music, it has to relate to the music.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, there's not a point inherently to it. But
yeah, I guess that's true, because like Metalocalypse, like the band were like over the top parodies of like death metal people, and the music was over the top parodies of death metal. Like they were a representation of the ideas in the music.
I just don't like the idea. It's the same thing that I fear about like AI music. I just don't like that concept.
Yeah,
I don't think it's gonna be a huge problem because humans are gonna relate to other humans. And I've listened to some of that AI-based ambient music.
Did you see the feed that Neil dropped? It was like, ask if like, is Travis Scott now just AI?
No, there's an AI video where the lyricism is all Travis Scott, and it's bad. It's bad. Like the lyricism's bad. I don't know if the vocals are. They didn't sound like it, but the lyricism's bad. Like it's not even close to Travis Scott. Like it's just it mentions like Jack Boys. And, like, I'm just like, okay, he said that a decent amount. That's why it popped up, because it's homogulated a bunch of Travis Scott songs, but it doesn't feel like any of this has... It feels like I'm just typing shit in Google Translate, translating it back and forth until I get a homogulated sentence. That doesn't make any sense.
I feel like the AI music is cool, like, in experimentation. Like, there's been, like... in other mediums, like people have been like playing off the idea. Lars von Trier once used like a program to like do his cinematography. And so, like, a program literally decided randomly when to move the camera or when to zoom in based on, like, the actors and
shit. I think
that's an interesting experiment. Yeah. But he immediately stopped doing it after one film because it's only good as an experiment.
There's a humanistic element to it at the same time. I haven't seen it. I'm not going to say it's good or not, but there's humanistic element. There's curation to it. My biggest problem is you get these just, like, big corporations making music just modulated. this mess. That's neither here or there, because it's time to talk about Grimes' latest album, Miss Anthropocene. I can speak words. Grimes is a Canadian singer-songwriter, record producer, and visual artist. She's mostly known for art pop and being kind of a polarizing artist. You either love her or hate her. I don't really know too much about her outside of that. I know the big singles, We Appreciate Flower and Oblivion.
My whole opinion,
But also I felt like she's always been distant in her personality, which is not necessarily a bad thing. You can be distant, but like I always feel like it's not real.
It kind of goes back to the things I've talked about when we did the Poppy review about like weird as an aesthetic versus weird with a point.
I didn't get weird as aesthetic.
Like it's
sometimes
not like specifically
I do.
Like
visually I do, but like her music,
like
I just got
like everything. Like
I just got
replace weird with like distant and pretentious.
Yeah, it's pretentious because like I think the way she describes things is super. I say dumb shit all the time, and I'm willing to admit I'm pretentious. I'm Mr. Pretentious, but like...
I mean, we're both pretty pretentious.
But I think, yeah, you're Mr. Pretentious. That's right. You said it, so now you have to live with it, Mr.
Look,
Pretentious.
I accept my pretentiousness.
But I think there's only, like, so far you should go into things before, like, they just become stupid.
Yeah.
And you need to admit the fact, what I'm talking about now is really dumb, and that's the human of you to do that. Grimes, I haven't really got that.
No.
And like she's distant, and not necessarily is always a bad thing, but like it's almost kind of lifeless.
Yeah.
And
which is I guess my main criticism of this album is like while the production on this album is like super clean, which I would expect given that she now has the resources of fucking Elon Musk to back her up.
She made this album in a Cybertruck.
Yeah, she could literally like make literally whatever she want, and she has so much fucking money at her disposal now to make things. Like if this album didn't sound good, that would be a fucking like crime, basically. Because you have so much money to clean things up. I necessarily don't have
that judgment, because I feel like people like...
I mean, like the production wise, like if the production was like grimy or gross or like not well mixed.
What if it was like a demos album? What if it was like a Daniel Johnson?
Well, if it's a demos, I'm assuming she didn't put the money behind it. But this is like a full album, a studio album.
I just want you to clarify that.
Yeah, like if you're gonna make a full studio album with your like pretty much pulling all your resources together, which now includes fucking Elon Musk's.
But she's also signed to a pretty big label.
Yeah, but like she has a big label now. She has Elon Musk's money to back her up. If this album sounded like a demos album or wasn't cleanly produced or like poorly mixed, that'd be a very bad sign. If it wasn't like with a purpose.
Basically what I want to say is I want to try to get through the rest of the review without referencing Elon Musk, because I feel like
I'm only going to reference it like when I'm talking about like the production, like the cleanest
inherently, because I feel like it crosses an ethical boundary I'm not really comfortable with, because we're here to review Grimes. We're not here to review her relationship with Elon, even though Elon's kind of this like shady figure.
Yeah. But like all I'm saying is like with all the resources, purely just talking resources available, the production of this album.
The coal available on this album.
Exactly.
She ran a steam engine and it fucking flew into the sky.
Yeah. But with the production available, obviously the album sounds fine. It sounds great. Like the production's good. All of the instrumentation sounds good. The mixing sounds good. Everything sounds good, but it's just kind of lifeless. There's very little personality on this album.
That's the biggest key, is personality, which is, I think, this thing's it's lacking. I have more positive things to say about this album than negative things. The biggest negative is personality, which really comes down to songwriting and her personal performance, which gets a little bit annoying at the end. But overall, the production's pretty clean in clips.
Yeah.
It gets a little bit samey on the second half. I'll admit that. It gets pretty long, but it's spectacular. You get shades of industrial, dark pop, electronica across this entire thing. It's very, at times, super happy and joyous, but also at sometimes just this deep, dark filth, which is nice to go through these different soundscapes, but it kind of only exists in those two soundscapes and not really anywhere else.
It doesn't, like the soundscapes are cool and all, but like this is meant to be like a concept album with a key character, like through the concept. Like it's supposed to be like the anthropomorphization of like Mother Earth, like taking revenge for climate change, basically. And if you have that grand of a narrative, but your vocalist and your lyricism has very little personality to it, the production stops meaning as much. Like, as good as it is, it doesn't carry the album. The album's supposed to be carried by like the lyrics and the voice and the character. And when the album doesn't have much going on that way, you can throw in as great of production as you want. The album's inherently going to be weaker because of the fact it doesn't have the character to go with it.
Yeah. Some interesting things I want to know. Dark Side's pretty interesting because I think it has this thick 808, these high chimes, this dark industrial like vibe that's just excellent. You have her angelic vocals, and it's completely ruined by her lack of chemistry with Pan.
Yeah,
just like these two albums do not fit on this track, and it's like I feel like Pan just doesn't fit.
No,
it's not terrible. Like I don't listen to Pan. I'm like, oh, that's bad. It's more of just like this shouldn't be here.
The lyrics are good, like when you translate them, but like it doesn't fit for the song. No, and that's like it.
This was supposed to be a little Uzi Vert beat at one point, but she like that never happened.
Yeah,
it got scrapped.
Thank God, I guess probably.
No, I really want to see it because this beat's fire. I want to see little Uzi Vert do his like random shit on it.
Oh, he was supposed to feature. I thought he was supposed to do the beat.
No, no, he wasn't gonna do the beat.
Oh, he was gonna feature. That'd be hilarious. That'd be amazing.
He wasn't gonna feature. It was gonna be his beat.
Oh,
she was gonna give it to him for his EP.
Oh.
And it got scrapped. I think it would have been fun.
Okay, that would have been good then, yeah. I thought you were saying like he was supposed to like make a beat for this song. Or like I was like, I didn't even know he did production.
I don't think he does.
Or like he was supposed to like feature on this. Like, oh, he was supposed to get the whole production and like get to do whatever you want. That would have been amazing, actually.
Delete Forever has this really indie vibe. It has this nice vocal pitch loop in the background that combines with these great acoustic guitars, and it has this more intimate setting and these strange vocals. While the strings later on are a nice progression, I think the track just lingers. It's about heroin overdoses and her kind of mourning the loss of her friends and feeling empty on the inside. But at the end of the day, I don't think it really hits. Yeah. It's hard to go through these subjects, but at the same time, I don't think there's really anything resonating lyricism that feels human.
It's kind of the same issue when we reviewed Halsey. Is like you can tackle these tough subjects, but when your vocals don't really reflect the nature of the topics you're talking about,
and it's not even to be harsh, but I think the songwriting it just doesn't feel human.
Yeah, and everything's too distant and too clean and too, I guess, calculated for like pop.
Yeah.
Like, and that was the issue of Halsey. Like Halsey was trying to tackle these like tough subjects, but everything just felt like pre-generic pop like production and didn't fit anymore. And then same issue of this is like you have like your calculated distance, and that doesn't fit when you're trying to talk about something that's personal.
Yeah. Violence talks about how we destroy the earth. It has this nice, cold, distant, hypnotic vocals. It really works well. I think this is one of the better tracks that really expresses everything it does in the time frame that it needs to do. It's catchy, it's fun, it's moody, intense. It gets to the main point, doesn't really need to do anything else, and it comes off as a success of a track where there really isn't anything really holding it back. Yeah. I will say 4 a.m., while I think it's a little bit pointless lyricism-wise, I think it's a fun drum and bass inspired pop tune.
Yeah.
I think it gets to the point. Apparently, this track's supposed to be in Cyberpunk 2077. She performed it at the Game Awards.
You said the title wrong. You gotta say it counter. Cyberpunk 2077.
She performed that at the Game Awards, and it was bad. Because a lot of the Game Awards... also, Green Day performed at the Game Awards, and that was also bad. Well, but for completely different reasons.
Because that's Green Day.
Because Grimes, she didn't perform. She lip-synced very prevalently and danced. And if she didn't lip sync, they didn't mic her well because she looked like she was very focused on dancing more than anything else. New Gods has some nice ideas with finding the idea of like how we all need to move forward and find something worth more, which kind of relates later on to.
I thought it was weird that track was there because also with like Dark Side, these are like a bunch of like DC Comics references because Dark Side is the leader of like the vile like evil New Gods. And I guess if she's talking about like the apocalypse, that kind of fits because that's their home world. But if you're just gonna make these references and not actively try to tie them into something, like the fuck's the point?
I didn't get I got the Dark Side reference. I didn't get the New Gods reference.
Well, Dark Side's like of the New Gods.
But like I'm not too invested into that.
Which is like the thing is like there's nothing really here beyond.
Dark Side was in the shitty Justice League movie, right? Or the only shitty.
No, that was Steppenwolf. Oh. I think Darkseid was supposed to be in the Snyder cut.
What?
I think Darkseid was supposed to be in the
Snyder
cut.
Release the Snyder cut.
Release the Snyder cut,
bro.
Here's the thing,
it's gonna fix the entire. We're not talking about the Snyder cut. It's bad. It's gonna be bad.
It would be bad because all of Snyder's films in that series were bad. Like, why do you think his version is inherently gonna be better when all of his other movies were shit?
Release the Snyder cut, bro.
If anything, I just want to see it to see how.
But
bad
like on New Gods, I like the idea of finding something more to yourself, and it kind of relates to the ideas of We Appreciate Power, which is a bonus track on there. So we should technically really shouldn't talk about it because I'm not going to talk about any of the additional bonus mixes.
But that was the funnest listen that I listened for.
But here's the thing: that track, the reason it's so interesting, it's humanizing in the way that it's almost cyborgish. It's talking about these ideas of almost upping up your own personal arsenal in a way of commending issues of like transhumanism in a sense. It gets into that, but it's more talking about like doing things to make yourself feel more confident in a grander scheme.
Yeah.
So like it touches about like finding things that make you feel accepted, even though inherently like makeup may be a bad thing, but if you're gonna use it and you like it, use it.
Yeah.
And like, is there a problem with it? And it gets in that transhumanism bit where it's like, is being something more human inherently bad?
Not really.
No, but like, it has the idea is so stigma. Far in the future that it's stigmatized.
Yeah, like a lot of things.
Yeah. The second half of this album, especially You'll Miss Me When I'm Not Around, has very emo lyricism. I'll read a little bit. If you don't bleed, then you don't die. Cross my heart and hope to fly. If you like it, then you'll make it out alive. If they could see me now, smiling 6 feet underground. I just found it
so edgy.
Yeah, it didn't really. There's something that was so kind of flat. She's like, now I'm edgy, and I'm like, yeah, that's a personality trait. That's kind of humanizing, but also at the same time, it's not.
It feels almost as calculated as her distance.
And then I don't know if there's.
What is this? It's a trend I've been seeing a lot lately, like in albums past few years. I don't know if it goes back forever, but like, what's if like indie pop-ish albums or like indie alt rock, like having these long ass closing tracks, like they're inherently like a lot longer than the rest of the like.
Because you gotta leave on something big, and people think if you leave on something long, it's something big.
Yeah, and it's
which inherently is wrong. It should be a track that
it's usually
you think
like
gives your audience closure.
It's usually like so long that like it's the track I like the least because it just kind of drags on for a while and leaves like a bad taste almost for the whole album. I think Bad Brains are the ones who did it right because they had like their fucking intense ass album
with 93 Punk.
No, not Bad Breeding.
Oh.
They had this like fucking intense ass album. Then they give you a little interlude. They go in the fucking hardest track that they have in the whole album. And that's how they leave you off of like just fucking depleted.
To me, it's something that's a little bit different that gives your audience closure. I know I don't really like to talk about my own personal music on here, but the way I like to leave things, it's like I like to put the last track that brings me joy. Either it's like a closing segment or like an interlude type thing, or it's something that will bring your audience closure or really catch their eye at the end.
Yeah.
And it makes them feel like the progress. Because you want to leave them something good to leave out on, or either something crippling depressing. Like get to your not your darkest moment, but one of your darker moments at the end. And necessarily you don't have to put your singles at the end or anything else, but like something super memorable that will stick with them. You need that sticking point.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a segment or an interlude, you need that thing. And I think on here it's just this long tireless segment that she's talking about being too mindlessly happy and like I don't know, it's so fucking I like the instrumental. It's very cheery. and fun, but also it's so fucking long that it just kind of loses its point. It's just talking about, we could play a beautiful game. You could chase me down in the name of love. I want to play a beautiful game, even though we're gonna lose. And later on saying, unrequited love has reassembled me. I think it's crazy, and if you had said I do, I reassemble you, baby. It seems like almost like artificial intelligence writing a love song. It doesn't seem human. It seems very flat. And that's not the point of it, is to be almost non-human.
This album doesn't pass the Turing test.
Yeah. I don't have much more to say. I just think there's good ideas on here. I don't really hate this album. I think I'm more positive than I am negative against it, but there's just so many blaring issues that...
I don't think I'm like more positive and negative. I think it's just, I'm pretty much split. Because, like, while the production's nice and some of the lyricism's nice, like, the lack of personality just is so glaring.
Keep in mind, some of the lyricism's nice.
Yeah, not all of it. Some of it.
Because that's the huge issue, really is the personality, and the lyricism is attachment to that. It's an offshoot of that.
Some of the lyricism's good. Sometimes the personality, like, works for specific tracks, but sometimes it's just so flat and empty personality-wise, and the lyricism is so just meandering or pointless or... so far up its own ass that it's pretty much a split down the even. Like, sometimes I'm enjoying this, sometimes I'm really not enjoying it, and it's, I guess, the most comparable album we've ever talked about that had that same like feeling for me was when we did the 1975 album.
I don't know, 1975,
but like 1975 was more extreme. Like, my highs were a lot higher than this one's highs, and my lows were a lot lower than this one's lows. This is like that, but like toned in. Yeah.
I don't know. Keep in mind all scores are futile and meaningless. Right now I'm feeling like 5-6.
Yeah, I was gonna say 5, like pretty much right in the middle.
But I think I'm more 6 than 5. But it's on the edge of that.
I'm 5.
Are you ready to get Ozzy Osbourne again?
But I'm just an ordinary man.
Time to go over the latest Ozzy Osbourne album, Ordinary Man. Ozzy Osbourne is an English singer, songwriter, actor, and television personality. He is mostly known from my childhood of watching The Osbournes, even though I don't have any memory of the show. I just have memories of watching the show.
He's mostly known to me because of my love of Black Sabbath.
He's from in a Black Sabbath who essentially pioneered heavy metal. And
I mean, while there are like some small like songs from like previous bands that like kind of touched on what heavy metal would eventually become. I mean, fuck, Queen's made up a straight up fucking thrash song like before heavy metal was even a thing, and that thrash was like way down the line in the history of heavy metal. Black Sabbath pretty much made a full album of heavy metal and pretty much established the genre of heavy metal.
Yeah, they were like, we need to take this metal and put a giant weight on it so it's heavy.
Yeah, and basically how they did that was, do you know the history of like how Black Sabbath found their sound?
Not really.
So basically,
I think I've heard it before. I don't remember it.
So basically, they were a jazz band originally.
Oh, I think I do remember. And it was
terrible. This. I have one of their early demos of like when they were a jazz band. It sucks. But then I think one of the guitarists like had to do like their day job was like in machinery, and they like fucked up their hand and they weren't able to play all the chords properly. So they had to like only play specific like power chords and like had to detune it a little bit, and that created like the distinctive like distorted sound that would be Black Sabbath's main sound. So basically they created their sound because they were a shitty jazz band who had an accident and discovered their good sound.
But they're known for like rich atmosphere,
super
dark setting,
dark menacing atmospheric sounds. Pretty much just anything you associate with her early heavy metal, the themes of early heavy metal, Black Sabbath did it. Yep. And then Ozzy left, and then they had Ronnie James Dio, who's like the second like most important figure in the history of heavy metal, like right after Ozzy Osbourne. And then Dio left, and then Black Sabbath sucked major ass until Ozzy came back for a reunion, and then they still kind of sucked because they were just all really old and were just retreading old territory.
Yeah. Ozzy Osbourne's, I believe, currently 71. So I was really interested to see what he would put out at this stage in his career, because it seemed randomly out of fucking nowhere, and it's the weirdest starting point for it to come to conclusion. He featured on the last Post Malone album, Hollywood's Bleeding. That's what it's called. And he featured on the track "Take What You Want," which is on this album's last track. Probably, it's essentially just a bonus track, it's a bonus. But I really enjoyed it because he seems so effortlessly able to cross over into a new era of music.
Ozzy,
and just be able to just blend with it just so effortlessly and just do what he did in the past, but just continue.
That's what I've always appreciated about Ozzy. After post Black Sabbath Ozzy, I like his like earliest few albums, the ones he did with his first guitarist before he died. Ozzy has always been in his greatest quality as an artist has always kind of been the people he can surround himself with. Because like he's not technically like a good vocalist. His lyrics are like the way his voice sounds is not technically good, but it's interesting.
And it brings
character.
Yeah, character.
But that character can only be held up by the people he surrounds himself with. That's why Black Sabbath was so good, because he was a character surrounded by really talented musicians who had really good like songwriting abilities in order to create the atmosphere that his voice worked in. After that, he got really good guitarists who were able to push like the funner qualities of his vocals further by just writing really good guitar riffs for him to sing over. And yes, he does write songs, and he is a talented songwriter. Pretty much the strengths are the people who he was able to get with him to write songs.
But that's also, it's a skill on its own.
Yeah, and that's
curation.
That's a skill. That's a very good skill. And that's what I've always appreciated about Ozzy is Ozzy didn't get so fucking far up his own ass that he was unable to accept the changing landscape of music. Like
hence Post Malone and Travis Scott.
Hence Post Malone, Travis Scott. Hence like other bands that like we reviewed, like older bands who would have like comeback albums, like Green Day, who like have this weird boomery mindset of like this is pure uncut rock. Ozzy doesn't give a fuck. Ozzy does whatever the hell he wants. Or like Blink-182, who misunderstand the changing musical landscape and try to adapt to it, but just fuck up. Because like they're still like them doing it basically. I was like, I don't give a fuck about this shit. I'll have people help me understand the way the music's changing. It's Post Malone.
Yeah.
Or like Iron Maiden, who just keep making the same shit over and over again. I'm just fucking tired of it. As much as I love early Iron Maiden. He doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about Ozzy. Ozzy is like, he's probably the oldest like iconic figure in like rock music who's still making music today, but he's the least boomery of all of them. Fucking Greta Van Fleet, who are like our age, are more boomery than Ozzy Osbourne is, because they are still stuck in the past of like, this is when rock was good. Ozzy doesn't give a shit. Ozzy will change.
Ozzy accepts the trap beats and the Swedish songwriters.
Exactly.
And the features.
Ozzy will change as music changes, because that's what music does. It evolves, and a good artist can evolve with it.
Yeah. So, For Frontal, I'm going to be completely honest. I really like this album. I thought it was fun.
I think it's fun. I don't think it's like... It's not
Here's the thing. Sometimes you just want an album
that's just fun.
Yeah, and like that's not inherently... I view this more... It's a metal album.
Yeah.
It's a metal / hard rock album. Yeah. That's the basis of what it lives in. But the experience I get out of it is like a pop album.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean it can't be at times have depth to it or have captivating performances or anything like that. I just feel like it fulfills the same niche.
It serves the needs that like old 80s albums, metal albums had. Because like you like getting out of like the 70s metal, which was like more of like an underground experience. Like you had to be part of the community to listen to this. And as it turned into the 80s, where that became like the big thing, was fucking pop music and pop metal and like hair metal and all that shit, where you have shitty bands like Guns N' Roses and fucking Whitesnake, and Kiss was still popular for some goddamn reason. I hate Kiss with a passion. They only made one good song.
What is that?
Detroit Rock City.
Okay.
But like,
I think the best thing that Kiss did was create the Kiss demon in WCW. WCW hired Kiss to do a concert, and then they got a wrestler to dress up as Kiss and wrestle matches in the face paint. And that gimmick lasted for longer than Kiss was around in WCW. For like many months afterwards.
Nice. But
and he was bad.
Yeah.
Because of course. Yeah.
But within like 80s metal, there were like a few standout songs and albums that were just so goddamn fun that like you can't really call them bad. Like they're not like, they don't hit the like artistic qualities of like early Iron Maiden. They don't hit the like raw underground aesthetic of like the thrash albums like Metallica. But they're just fun, and they're fun listens, and that's kind of where Ozzy's always placed himself at post Black Sabbath, was like just having fun and making fun to listen to metal music. You listen to it the same way you listen to just any basic radio ass music, whatever's popular at the time. It's just, it has the aesthetics of metal this time.
So I think where this rings, Ozzy isn't redefining his career.
No.
He isn't redefining his legacy. He isn't a new artist who's finally finding their fullest potential or anything like that. He's consistently finding good curation, good production to put himself over, just a fun atmosphere, catchy tunes, not enough to take himself seriously, but some occasional nuance is nice. I think starting off, the most notable thing that I think Jonathan brought up to me was how effortless those collaborations with Post Malone were, how fun they were. I really like the new track. It's a raid. With my favorite line where Post Malone starts off his verse and says, "Hold on, I'm running out of cigarettes." Fuck.
Also, like, the production on that track is going almost past like metal and almost into punk territory.
Yeah,
because like it doesn't have like these long-winded like guitar riffs that you normally associate with metal. It's like super fast-paced, like just like strumming. Like, it's not like riffing. It's pure just like hitting this like notes like really quickly, and almost into like a simplistic. We're almost like taking like the same basic note and just hitting it like a bunch that you get from like early punk to early hardcore. Like, which is weird because that's a territory I don't think I've ever really heard Ozzy like sing over.
Yeah, and And like they're both obviously having fun on their hooks, and they collaborate each other. It seems like they're having a blast in the studio, and that's why you can get out a lot of these Ozzy tracks, especially Ordinary Man with Elton John. Even though it's like a dark, touching part, I can see that there's effort being put into the performance. It's not lifeless. This isn't a cash grab. It seems important. Ozzy hasn't put out an album in like 10 years, I think. It
was a while,
but like it seemed like this had purpose to exist, which was nice.
Even if that purpose was just Ozzy having fun.
Yeah. Which obviously shows throughout this entire thing. The other track I want to mention, I already talked about this in our post review, but Take What You Want, I love how they incorporate the trap beat. I love how Travis's haziness is reminiscent of almost Ozzy's haziness, and it's like these two areas that have existed in time collaborating. I think it's so strange. Ozzy's doing the same thing he always does. Travis is doing pretty much the same thing he always does, and they both find those grounds.
It's like a collaboration that you would never think of, but then it happens, and you're like, that made sense. That made way too much sense for us to have not realized it made sense beforehand.
Yeah. Going into some new tracks on here. I love All My Life. It's super catchy. He has built a yelpiness to his voice. There's these majestic guitars. There's some great lyricism talking about, I was standing at the edge looking down at myself as a child, and he looked back at me crying tears of defeat from his eyes. He said, all I know, all the lies that you hide behind every fake smile, and am I gonna be lonely like you? Shit. And essentially saying he's running from pain his entire life, and maybe it's time to stop running and just confront it head on. You get some nuance to like things that are like, I'm not saying this is completely in his new house, because Ozzy's music has always been heavily around about like darker themes and
addiction, especially like as he like got over his own, and it's just as you expect from like heavy metal, it deals a lot of like just darkness, sometimes not like dwelling on the darkness, sometimes just kind of the way Misfits had darkness, where it's just an aesthetic.
But he gets into some of these ideas of like he's getting up there in age, and like he has to reflect on this like past life, like Ordinary Man with Elton John, the big piano ballad with these great choir accompaniment and these huge guitars in the background. It's completely amazing piano ballad. Slash does a good job on the track. Apparently he's on the track. I think his shredding's fun. There's a ton of good shredding on here. I don't really care for shredding a lot, but I think it's fun on here when it's done in the scenarios. Where it brings life to these tracks and makes them fun. But on Ordinary Man, he says he doesn't want to die an ordinary man. He's reflecting on his life, and having Elton John, a huge figure in rock music, but in a different aesthetic of that, is nice. That there's more reflecting. Two of these legends are reflecting on themselves, and not feeling like boomers. Showing like humanity.
It's great because it really establishes the thing that like boomer isn't just an age thing, it's an attitude.
There's some funnier tracks like "Eat Me," where he's just literally telling people to eat him.
Are you forgetting the greatest lyric on "Straight to Hell"? He says, "I'm gonna make you scream, I'm gonna make you defecate."
No, the greatest line on this is on "Eat Me." The little ad lib he has on the end. He says, "I'm on the menu. Are you hungry?" I can't emphasize how funny it is. His performance. It just seems like I'm just gonna go in there and say something fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Scary little green man. I was trying to like dig deep because there's a track I'll get into right after this that is a metaphor or something that sounds like a typical like Black Sabbath-esque lyricism, but it's touching kind of lightly on other subjects. I thought this was maybe talking about like immigrants and aliens, but it's not.
It's just aliens.
It's just aliens. I wanted it to be something big. It's because there's like ideas. It's because it's like there's a line in there. It's like I don't know if I wrote it down, but it's like we want them until we beat them. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of like a Bloomberg aesthetic where Bloomberg loves immigrants, but he loves fucking neglecting them at the same time.
Which I don't know. I guess I'm definitely more tuned to trying to find that, but at the same time I'm not, because like I listen to Black Sabbath, we have like tracks like Iron Man, which just sound like a weird kind of like take on a comic book character, but at the same time it's like discussing like violence and war and how basically like the more and more like we're like trying to like improve our weaponry, the more we just become these like inhuman beacons of violence to other people. Like the more like powerful your weaponry is, the more inhuman you become.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're less obvious with, or like more obvious with like War Pigs, obviously what that's talking about. But then I also remember that like when Ozzy switched to fucking like just being Ozzy, he would make tracks like Bark at the Moon.
And or Crazy Train, which is about a really angry train.
And literally like he's just writing lyrics about fucking whatever.
Yeah. And which is not necessarily a bad thing. I just like the funny, like I think this track's fun. Yeah. I think it really doesn't serve a point. I think it's probably maybe potentially the worst track on here, but he's still having fun.
It's still fun.
But like, I just felt like it was close to something that was nuanced, and like, I don't think he was intending it to be, but I read it as that for a second, and as the track progresses, like, no, this is just aliens. Yeah. These are just like actual aliens.
These actually just little green men.
The one track I wanted to talk about though is that has nuance to it. Today is the End, talking about gun violence and school shootings, but not heavily focusing on that. It still feels like past material as is, and like these darker aesthetics of like death. But it has lines like they kill and we give them fame, so tell me who's to blame.
Yeah.
The sun is black, the sky is red, and it feels today is the end. The kids are running as fast as they can. Could it be today is the end? It's like it's making these attachments, and when you isolate moments like the second line I just said, it just sounds like a Black Sabbath song. When you add the first part, there's nuance to it.
And it kind of creates this idea of like how all violence is inherently viewed the same way. Because like we give like, they're talking like, the skill shooters to give them more fame than the victims, but also like think of how much we like think about I'm blanking on his name, but like the sniper who had the like most confirmed kills ever, and he had a whole fucking movie made about him, and all he did was kill people, largely indiscriminately, like on his own accord, like, and how he described is like he just basically saw them as not human, and he would just kill people pretty much indiscriminately. He's famous now, and it's just kind of pretty much on every level we dehumanize in order to kill. And it's just basically all violence is bad, but it uses traditional like metal aesthetic. So
I like the track Holy for Tonight because it says it's the idea that he's facing his own mortality. He says, but also at the same time, he's always been facing his immortality. So
literally from the beginning.
No, but like this kind of emphasizes I'm running out of time forever. Yeah. I know that's I'm someone they won't remember because everyone won't be remembered forever.
Yeah.
And he's always been constantly running out of time, but now it's more prevalent.
Which as somebody who's like followed his career, it also kind of makes sense for him, because it seems like he's like an icon. It seems like he's always like lived on the edge of like being overlooked and forgotten. Because like after he got kicked out of like Black Sabbath, like most people just assumed his career was over, and then like he was able to get a solo career, but then like he keeps like having issues with drugs, and like then he goes to rehab. People are like, oh, his career's over now, and just pretty much he's always like been on the edge of like either dying for real because of like his addiction problems that he used to have, and now people are like, oh, Ozzy's still alive. I thought he would have died a long time ago. And how like, oh well, he hasn't released a year in like 10 years. Like he's done
released an album in 10 years.
Yeah, and like it's kind of this thing where he seems like he's always on the edge of being just kind of overlooked and forgotten, despite his iconic status.
Yeah. That's all I really have to say. I really enjoyed this album. It's fun. It's catchy. There's great shredding across it. All the atmosphere fits it. It's lively, energetic, but it still can get into these darker areas of mood. Not Black Sabbath-esque by any means, but darker. And even some like lighter, darker, like the piano ballad with Elton John, Ordinary Man, I think is able to fit that intensity. Even though it's so Boldy-esque and kind of happy in a way, the things it's talking about is so fundamentally sad.
I think this album does a shockingly like important thing for metal. I don't even think it's aware of what it's doing, but it's kind of, metal needs to go back to being fun. Like it needs to go back to that 80s time frame, because like we went through new metal, which was so attempting to be dark and edgy, and then now we've kind of just gone 2000s extreme metal and metalcore. And it's just all so bland and forgettable. Like the best metal band right now that people like constantly refer to as like the current like highlight of like metal is Ghost. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Ghost.
Ghost is good though.
I appreciate Ghost, and they're just a fun metal band.
Yeah, that's what makes them the best.
Yeah,
that's why their last album was so good, because it was fun. Like it had dark nuance like this. Yeah. It wasn't revolutionary for their genre, but it was fun. Yeah, and like sometimes like art, like I'm gonna say this right, and I'm gonna be done because I think we'd be going on this for too long. Art as a whole, it can be something that's completely tedious, but it doesn't always have to be. No, if you're having fun with your material, it can resonate with your music. Not always, because I bet Logic had a fucking fun time making Supermarket, and that's terrible. Terrible album. But like sometimes music can just be fun. Yeah, and that's the point of it. As long as you're having fun, if you're enjoying it, that's all that really matters. It doesn't mean artistically it has a greater point. Yeah. But like, I think he's not really reinventing himself. He's consistently showing that he's a brilliant artist.
He's vocally aged the best of like everybody. Like we did the Subhumans album like last year, and one of the things I talked about is how much like Dick, because that's his name, and I could say that all I want, the way that Dick, his voice just, it's aging so badly. Like one of the cool things about early Subhumans was the uniqueness of his voice, and now he just sounds really old and tired, and his vocals doesn't stand up anymore. Or we talked about it a little bit when we talked about Green Day, about how his voice is just sounding really mediocre and the worst it's ever sounded. When we talked about Bad Religion, I think I talked about a little bit too, is how he just kind of sounds old now. Yeah. Ozzy, he sounds old, but he doesn't sound aged.
Old can be a characteristic trait too.
Like
oldness can make a track if you're like, you don't always have to sound the same.
Yeah,
I know you're not meaning that.
I'm not meaning, but like factors. Comparing like this to like his first solo album, because comparing to Black Sabbath is a little unfair because he was trying to do things vocally that were a little bit different back then. Like comparing his first solo album to this, he sounds older, but he doesn't sound old, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, it's a concept.
Yeah, he sounds just. His voice sounds a little more tired and a little more worn out, but he still has like the same energy to him. Yeah, he doesn't sound like he's just given up and is just making music at this point.
I keep in mind, I'm not gonna let this review for going for too long. It's been really long, but I really enjoyed this album.
I enjoyed this album.
I think it has faults in the fact that material like this has been done, but other than that, I think everything done on here, there's nothing that key point that where Ozzy like messed up and it ruins everything. There isn't that on this. Keep my scores futile meaningless right now. I was gonna give this an 8-, but I think it's an 8. I really enjoyed it. I'm gonna talk about it. I like it.
I was gonna give this like a 7.5. I think it's closer to an 8. You said it's like an essential project.
I think it's essential because
I think
it's
an essential metal project. I think on the grand scheme of music, it's not an essential project. I think it's an essential project for its genre, but I don't think it's essential.
Sometimes like that, but that also falls into our larger theme of essential projects.
Yeah.
Like, just because it doesn't fall, it's the same thing. Yeah. All the essential projects are same. Yeah. All the essential atrocities are the same. Yeah. We would recommend it.
Yeah, we recommend it However, I'm going to say if you're just not a fan of heavy metal in general, I wouldn't listen to it.
If you haven't seen a single episode of the Osbournes, don't listen to this.
Yes. I guess
You're
that's
not a true fan.
I guess that's what I mean when I say it's like it's essential for its genre. Like there are some albums I think transcend its genre to become like essential to like people who don't like the genre.
Yeah.
This one I don't think does that. Yeah. I think it's essential if you like the genre. If you don't like the genre, don't give this a listen because you're not going to like it.
We talked for way too long. Are you ready to get into the next album, which is
King K. Rool?
King K. Rool. He has the metal tummy, and he's gonna be alive and also a man. Time to go to the latest King Krule album, Man Alive.
It has an exclamation point. You need more energy.
Man alive, man alive. Let me get to my notes. King Krule, otherwise known as Archie Ivan Marshall, is a
Marshall Mathers.
Yeah, Marshall Mathers. Venom. Is a English post-punk artist who I mostly know from his 2017 album The Ooze, which at the time we did year-end awards, and this album received the biggest, probably most important award, most overrated album of that year, because people are eating this album to pieces, saying it's the greatest because it had elements.
Wait, wasn't it the same year Damn came out?
Yeah, Damn I think has worth to it, even though it's not great. It's not the greatest Kendrick product. I think it's overrated in the scheme, but like King Krule's The Ooze was overrated in the artsy sense where people kept on overrating it even though there was much substance there. The thing was over an hour long. It featured elements of punk jazz and post-punk being compiled into this very moody, brooding aesthetic, kind of similar to the aesthetic on here, but just amplified to a 10. There's some amazing moments, like Dumb Surfer that year was my second favorite track. I still think it's an incredible, brilliant post-punk anthem that showcases all the charisma and quirky characteristics and essentially blend of jazz and post-punk that King Krule did excellently at the best moments of that album. I think that album, comparative to this, has the best highs, but it also has the lowest unbelievable lows, and it lingers there in that low period for so long. And his broodiness literally leads to him saying one of the most cliche and stupid lines of all time. I have depression.
Because I got depression.
Not in that cool way. That's a cool way.
That's a funny, memey way.
But I just didn't care for it. It's something that showcased a ton of potential, but didn't lead anywhere.
Imagine if that album that was delivered that way. Just like, I dipped my nuts in some $1,000 dressing.
I don't know.
Because I got depression.
I don't know. You sound like Darby Allin. Do you know who Darby Allin is?
No.
He's a guy who wrestles, and he's also a skateboarder. And sometimes he takes the skateboard with tacks on the bottom, and he slams onto his opponent's back because he's a psychopath. That's neither here or there. You just said sounded.
Why do you bring everything back to wrestling?
Because that's the main point in all society.
You bring it back to something I have like no interest or real connection to.
It's really just like politics. Wrestling is where we're at as a society currently.
I mean, like, I don't disagree with that, but
so we must bring it up because it is the contemporary topic. So this new album, without talking about wrestling, is 41 minutes, which I was kind of glad to see that this wasn't over an hour, because last time it was just so brooding. This was the last thing I listened to. Actually, no. BTS was the last thing, but we're not reviewing to that today.
This is the last thing you listened to that's being talked about.
I didn't want to listen to this because the singles didn't interest me. The only one I didn't listen to any other singles besides...
I don't even know what the singles were.
The only one I'm aware is Don't Let the Dragon Drag On, because that seemed like a poor representation of a lot of the songs on his last album. Even though it was 2 minutes, 32 seconds, it felt like infinity. It felt like infinite broodingness and mediocrity. The fact that the production just lingers, and it's kind of aesthetically pleasing, but it's not interesting. It has these accents of jazz, especially with the bass and how the keys are played, but nothing that stands out stylistically. And he has this kind of like, it's not surrealist, but
you still have the album cover up. I just realized that.
Oh, that doesn't matter. Yeah. It's not surrealist, but it's like dreamlike.
Yeah.
Like a lot of this feels like he's just sleeping and he's describing what he's seeing in his dreams.
But
which doesn't make it surrealist.
No.
But similar in S.
It's kind of I keep comparing, and you said you don't get the comparison, but like I compare this sometimes to like Tropical Fuckstorm.
I only get that comparison on the basis of post-punk, but like I don't think there's accents except for maybe that what's the frontman of Tropical Fuckstorm's name? I can't remember for the life of me, but they both have like that ability to go moanier, but Tropical Fuckstorm heightens that down a bit. Yeah. And they also get more intense and they get polished through the entire thing. King Krule, his problem for me has just been lingering. Yeah. And on this, I actually kind of welcome the lingering, but it's still around for way too long than it needs to be there.
But so like what I would say is like there's some like elements that like King Krule uses that Tropical Fuckstorm also uses a lot. You hear it with the guitar where there'll be like just random like I think you had a good like it's like twangy, but like it's almost like a twaniness that like Captain Beefheart would use. It's like random bits of guitar that seem like they're out of place, but like used rhythmically to where you know that like it's actually supposed to be there, and it creates this kind of dissonant, off-kilter guitar sound. Now, how Captain Beefheart and Tropical Fuckstorm use that is they use that pretty heavily, and they use it intensely to create an deeply off-kilter sound effect and just a general landscape.
But I also think they varied it up a bit.
Yeah, and variants.
King Krule kind of lives in that same type of atmosphere.
And he does it, but he does it in this really slow way where like you'll have like that off-key, like off-kilter like guitar bit, and whereas like Tropical Fuckstorm then followed up with like a couple more bits of that guitar and then keep going back to it. He'll do it for like a little bit and there'll be a little bit of space before he does it again. And it basically just sounds like if you were to take a Tropical Fuckstorm song and just kind of stretch out too far. Which is like the issue I think I have with his song is like he has these interesting elements that I've heard other bands use that I love, but he's using them, it seems, almost incorrectly.
Let me get a little bit more forward to saying I think I have positive feelings for this album. I still think this is an enjoyable and at times rewarding listen, and to your average post-punk fan, they would probably really enjoy this album or dig it. I think this one is worth the amount of hype I've seen towards it. Hopefully it doesn't progress to somewhere where this is like the greatest album of all time territory, like people said the Ooze was, but I think it's worth it. While I do have problems with Drag On, that's the most unbearable track on here, and I really fundamentally don't have problems without anything except for like fundamental issues of how the album works, how the album as a whole piece works rather than the album as individual pieces.
Yeah. I think I like this album like the first bit. So like
but also in the first bit he's a lot more energetic.
Yeah. Like Cellular to Supermark to Stoned Again, I think are like in that area are like really interesting bits where like he's more energetic, he's more interesting to listen to, and then I'm okay if the way he turns like towards the middle bit a little like dronier and a little more brooding and long dragged on.
But it also lives in that until the end of the album.
And that's the thing. I think actually like right where you hit Don't Let the Dragon is where I'm getting kind of tired of it. And I think Don't Let the Dragon drag on is so dragged on that it literally just kills my experience for the rest of the album. Even if it were to get more interesting at that point, it's lived so long within this like deadened space, and then it hits the absolute like pits of it that no matter what comes out afterwards is going to have kind of a bad taste on my mouth because it went through that.
The themes of this album are what I really one of the most enjoyable things about this album for me is not necessarily how the writing's structured, but how the themes are structured. It's very much about unrestlessness and almost an existential crisis, and trying to find faith, whether it is in your dreams of actual dreams or like relationships, and finding holy ground in that. And also kind of how bad that can be is to have that worship of someone, especially in the last track where he's talking about ex-lover, how bad the outcry could be. But I like the idea of how this album's sound matches the themes, even though I think the sound is a little bit tired in like the center to the end.
But like I think you can do like those like slow brooding existentialist tracks.
Yeah, no, and you can.
Like that's what Swans does really well. Like especially on their last album, like that was a very existential album, but the tracks were actually still interesting.
Yeah, no. I'm saying you can completely do it. Yeah. It doesn't have to exactly match, because Stone, again, he has this hip-hop flow. He has the distorted bass. It's awkward, but at the same time, it's enjoyable in presence. There's these welcoming, moody guitars later on, but it fits. It brings this interesting personality. On Let Go, there's this thick bass, twang guitar, dusty percussion. He's talking about all these restless people and their ideas for searching for something more, and the idea of a supermarket and all these people being intertwined. But it fits. He's a little bit more energetic. Yeah. It doesn't get to sleepy time, this voice, completely yet.
Yeah.
There's another track on here. I forget which one it is. I think it's Energy Fleets. No, maybe it isn't. I don't remember. I'm not gonna talk about it. But there's tons of rich atmosphere in the second half, and there's like moments where I think he could bring it up a bit, personality wise. He doesn't always have to be brooding, even though the brooding does match what he's going for.
Yeah.
Comic Face was the track I was thinking of, but that's a little bit more energetic post punk. You get tracks like Perfect, Miserable, where Krule's love is the only thing keeping him afloat, or on the last track, Please Complete Thee, where he's talking about searching out fried from this love, this lost lover, even though it's not going to do anything for him.
Yeah.
Or it, like, almost the humility in searching for that. Energy Fleets is talking about how he's kind of laughing off his life in the existential crisis, how lucky he is, and kind of acknowledging what a funny life he has, in the strangeness of his depression, finding one hope in the general being of himself that makes everything a little bit better, just a little bit. Yeah. The laugh, the humor of knocking off how funny your life is and how strange it is. Alone Omen has the great idea of being alone in paradise. What would that be like? And also how the idea of paradise is you're always going to be alone because everything's so perfect. Yeah. It's that weird existential crisis of, can you ever be truly happy if everything's good and you don't have anything bad? But other than that, I think the themes are really successful in this.
Yeah.
I think the performance is too brooding. He needs to be more energetic. I think production needs to follow suit. And sometimes, while I do think the guitars are twangy and they fit in an environment, I also feel like he's at a point where like he can move past this phase, because his guitars have always sounded this way.
Yeah.
I think this is a success from the Ooze, but it's nothing I would consider essential.
No.
It's nothing that I think is a complete must listen, but if you do like post-punk, I would recommend it. And if you like this album, it's completely understandable. Because there's great qualities to this, but it's just not figured. There's a ton more potential I'm seeing from this. It's nice that we're getting the blending of some jazz elements, not too forefront as they were on the Ooze, but like, it's nice that he's toning himself back a little bit, but there's still more toning he needs to do and finding that right mix. The Ooze still had bigger highs than this, I will say.
You made me listen to that album and before I listened to this one.
Did you actually listen to it?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I actually listened to it on the way back home from that review, like when you told me that this is what we were reviewing. And yeah, there's definitely moments in the Ooze I was much more into.
Yeah, Half Man, Half Shark.
Yeah.
Dumb Surfer, even Slush Puppy. Like, there's tons more of aesthetic there, but it's also some more brooding and lifeless.
Yeah. That album was like hard to get through because like while it had like those good moments, there was just trying to get between them. That wasn't fun.
Yeah. This is way more of a success though. And keep my scores if you tell me this right now. I think this is a 7-.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a 7+ for like the first half, but then like the second half just kind of drags that down to like a low 7, 6.5, something like that.
And that's it. Now we are in complete harmony, almost like a Wrekmeister harmony. What does that mean?
It comes from a movie by Bellatar.
Oh yeah,
Wrekmeister Harmonies.
Yeah, I read that somewhere. I forget where, but I did.
I own that movie.
You do?
Yeah.
Is it good?
It's pretty good. Okay. I'd say of Bellatar's films, it's probably his most accessible.
Dude, I love their fights. Without any further ado, let's go over the latest Wrekmeister Harmonies album. We love to look at carnage. Carnage. Wrekmeister Harmonies is a Chicago experimental music collective that combines elements of Jerome music, surrealism, serialism, post-rock, and heavy metal. It mostly is run by Jay Robinson, who's on lead vocals, but recently has featured Esther Shaw.
Esther Shaw's always been there. It's always pretty much centered around J.R. Robinson and Esther Shaw.
Okay, I think I read somewhere a
series of like collaborators.
I read somewhere that J.R. Robinson was the big.
He's like, I think, the founder, and then Esther Shaw is like the secondary. Okay, but like it pretty much revolves around them. It's kind of like Jamie Stewart and whatever Asian woman he's with at the time, and then other people.
Every time we say that, it makes me uncomfortable because it's kind of like racism, but it's also true.
It's kind of true. Like ever since like I think it was like his cousin or somebody left the band, it's pretty much just been like a series of like random people.
This time around, it features. Funny you mentioned Jamie Stewart, because this time around the group collected features Jamie Stewart on electronics and Thor Harris, who's the drummer of Swans, on drums.
Yeah.
This is an album I didn't know about, and Jonathan brought it up to me, and he said Jamie Stewart was involved, and I was interested, and I listened to the first track of this, and I was sold. I think this is a good. I consider it personally, to me, I think this is a post-rock album. That's the thing I think fits into it the most.
I guess if you had to give this like one distinctive genre label, I'd say like post-rock or post something like that.
Yeah, because I think I've seen a lot of descriptions calling this experimental. Not that I don't think it's experimental by any means,
same like post-rock vein that like late Swans fits in.
Yeah,
and that like I guess technically that's the genre to give it, but that's not really a great descriptor.
It's not the only description you can have it, because elements of metal, experimental music are on here. Jerome music's on here, but I think post-rock is the biggest descriptor, somewhere between a Jerome music and experimental rock release.
Yeah.
So I thought this was a lovely album in the extent of setting up these, I was going to say scenarios, but more settings.
It's
where you have these very beautiful, I don't want to say nature, but it could be reminiscent of a place like that. This natural, not nature though. Natural setting to its own degree.
Yeah.
And the constant environment around it changing either through the perspective of someone's eye or through apocalypse.
I think this album is in part about apocalypse. So taking what I've heard them like talk about their music before in this album in particular, and also knowing what they named themselves after. Like, you don't name yourself after a Bela Tarr film for, like, no fucking reason. Because, like, you don't watch a Bela Tarr film for no fucking reason. Like, you have to be a very specific type of person to seek out a Bela Tarr film. And so, what their album, and especially this one, seems to be is what Bela Tarr's, like, most famous films outside of, like, his last film are usually about are these very slow, existential pieces watching groups of people fall apart. So his most famous film, Satan Tango, is a 7-hour film about a town of people trying to deal with the fact that they were formerly a communist town over the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. What becomes of them? And basically, it's an existential piece where everything they do just crumbles around them.
Yeah.
And then the film that they're based off of, Wrekmeister Harmony, is when a weird, like, carnival comes to their town and brings with it, like, an existential representation of, like, evil and dread and just, like...
I love killer clowns from outer space.
Yeah. And just, like, it's a bizarre thing that just, like, tears the town apart slowly. What I gained from this album, because they described this album as, like, we started with the idea of walking out your door.
Yeah.
And that this is kind of just a look at the end of the world through various people's eyes in like this small little community.
Okay.
And instead of it being
that's an interesting take that I didn't think about it, because I got apocalypse.
Yeah.
Because with the title called Midnight to 6, you're gonna think apocalypse.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
So it
but
seems
also like it could be various views of apocalypse, but I also kind of saw it very linear.
It's linear, like I think, because most like of Bela Tarr's films are linear, but they like have just different viewpoints that they go through between like the series of events. Like they don't like show the same events twice. So it seems almost like this album is like the end of the world, and then what comes after it. And instead of it being like the usual like apocalyptic visions, it's kind of just how much has really changed. Because like you have like the things like with the Ratcatcher where he's talking about all I've ever really wanted was just a place to lay my head. That never really changed like for that character because like that's all he needed beforehand, and now the world's over and all he still really needs is just a place to lay his head at night.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have one still because he was homeless before, and now he's just still living in the cold to die.
Yeah.
It's kind of this weird like existentialist, brooding, slow moving piece, just kind of taking this event, breaking down into these like small little chapters and perspectives of it, and just kind of going through them and just creating just existential piece on something pretty apocalyptic, which is something Bellatar himself does kind of heavily. His last film that he ever made, The Turin Horse, was literally, he described it as like a Nietzschean anti-creation story told through the perspective of just a small family. And it's literally just 6 days of them watching the world die around them, completely unaware of it, and they just live their lives until eventually there's nothing left but darkness.
What I interpret this album as, Midnight Six, is very apocalyptic. It's brooding, it's beautiful at the same time, and it's like the beauty of the world around you slowly is going to fall apart in the final moments of something. You finally embrace how beautiful it is before it is taken away from you. With the lovely keys that blend with the guitar so perfectly. The violins on this are fucking phenomenal and brilliant. The light vocals, the peaceful, calm percussion, the like very calm cymbals. It's either a cymbal or it's
I think it's chimes.
Chimes.
Yeah, there's a lot of chimes in this album, I'm pretty sure.
But especially that, how light it is and just passing, it works so well. Or not passing, pulsing. It works so well. JR's voice seems so ghostly, but like accepting of where he is. And then there's this almost like grandiose flashback or flash forward, finally accepting everything, just everything amplifies into this beautiful blend. Like it's all like being compressed into one segment. At one time, you're finally seeing the world for what it truly is. Then moving on to the next track, which is, it's off-putting. Something's wrong with this like natural world around you. Jamie Stewart pops up, so you know something's fucking wrong.
Jamie Stewart doesn't show up for anything less than the apocalypse.
As soon as you said that, like the first thing that popped in my head is like, I'm here, I'm queer, I'm gonna watch shit burn. It has this rich progression into the apocalypse with rich bells, moody, thick atmosphere. Truly a lovely track that gets into a more strange, off-putting assignment. I love the combination of vocals from JR and Jamie, even though they're not like on top of each other or harmonizing each other. I like that fit. It reminds me of when Eugene Robinson combined with Jamie on the last Shoo Shoo album at the end track.
Yeah.
Like that fit. Just like these two haunted figures next to each other. Now we're here and it's like two more ghosts at the Ghost Club meeting up for the apocalypse. That one I think you can describe is this from different viewpoints. I think I can describe that as someone who's not really willing to accept the pain of what the world's going to end. Coyotes of Central Park, you said, if someone just trying to find to rest their head and that's all that really is important to them.
Well, that's Ratcatcher.
Oh, Ratcatcher, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. But like the second half of this album, I enjoy it. It's fine. It has all fundamentally things that I enjoy from something that post-rock, I'm gonna put post-rock in parentheses. It has fundamentally great production, great soundscapes, but it doesn't fundamentally hit the essential itch like the first two tracks does. It blends well with everything else, but it doesn't seem as fantastic. It doesn't seem as noteworthy, and I don't think it really...
I feel like it doesn't, but it's...
scratch. I think when you combined it with the first half, it meets everything I want from like a post-rock album. Something around the lengths of something of that style. It meets that nature of what I want or I expect. It has great environment. It has great soundscapes. It has great production. It has great vocals. It fits a mood. It fits a setting. But the first two tracks are just so amazing in setting up everything else that this like everything in comparison to those last tracks doesn't mean as much.
I think it does and doesn't. I think if you take in like the theme of like this is the world after the apocalypse, but like what's really changed, it kind of makes sense. It turns the piece being greater than the sum of its parts kind of deal.
Yeah.
Where these last halves aren't meant to stand on their own. They're not to exist outside of any point beyond the album. I know Coyotes of Central Park was the only one they kind of released as a single. My guess is that's probably because it's also the shortest track on here. I also feel like this is a band that doesn't really give that much of a shit about singles, given that the only reason I ever heard of this album existing was because I followed Jamie Stewart on Instagram. Yeah. He was posting about the fact that he was on the album and that we should all check it out when it comes out.
Yeah.
And I did, thankfully. And so I feel like it's one of those things like, yes, it ticks all the boxes. Like it's technically like grand. Like it doesn't hit the same itches that like these first bits do. I feel like that's also kind of the point.
And that doesn't necessarily make it bad because I still think it's a good album. Really and good. Thinking about how much I enjoy it as the Grander Things helps make me realize I do really like this album still. Yeah. I still think it isn't as impressive as it could be. Which could be because of the themes it's resonating with or the ideas it's trying to present. But also the end just doesn't stand out. Yeah. And that's fundamentally... If themes are going that way, it's fine. It has a purpose. I'm not going to knock you for that, but it just, personally with me, it doesn't resonate.
It still resonates.
You don't always have to end with something flashy or bold, but you have to end with something kind of that resonates. And like to me, the beginning resonates. And when I think about how well the beginning starts and it broods and it builds, in the second half it does pretty much the same thing, but not as impressive.
I think the ending of this album resonates with me, but just like in a different way. Because whereas like you were talking about like we were talking about like Grimes, like oh we need to end on this like grandiose piece, or like oh you can end up like the most punchy. This ends. It resonates with me because the purpose of it. It like ends,
and that's totally fine. Yeah. I'm not saying that's wrong, but also for me, as experiencing this album, it just I don't know. Maybe if I went to the last track on its own, I feel like I would still enjoy the track. But when you comparison to everything beginning, it's a problem. Yeah.
It resonates. The ending of this film resonates with me the same way that like the ending of I won't go back to Bellatar, even though it's like the obvious one because that's who they're fucking named.
Yeah.
So, like a Tarkovsky film ending. Like, the ending of, like, Stalker, or one of his fades, doesn't really resonate because of, like, the strength. It's, like, not, like, the super strong ending, but, like, the ending, like, ties things together into, like, a thematic point.
Yeah.
And it's not, like, this, like, oh, gotta go out on a big note. It goes out on this very soft, kind of pointless note where, like, it doesn't seem to, like, fit because like do you remember the ending of Stalker,
I know
like the cup moves
and,
like it doesn't really tie into like anything like plot wise like this wasn't really brought up before. This isn't something that like really matters, but like it kind of goes on with like the themes of the film, and that's kind of what this does. Like this doesn't resonate with me like because of like oh man it's such a cool ending, it's such like a cool note to leave off on, but it resonates with me because like it makes the rest of the thing fit. Like it seems like it's a part of the greater whole, and it makes me think about the picture as a whole.
Yeah, which is totally, it's a fine thing. I'm not saying that's like a type of thing that needs to be this way, because you can end the album in a various bunch of ways. Anything's possible, but I'm saying for me, just it's more, the ending is important, but it's not as important how the first two tracks really set this thing up, and the last three tracks don't repeat it completely holds the put because there's new ideas being presented, but they're not as important as the first two. Which, in a theory, if you're talking about Apocalypse, the Apocalypse is important. That's the big no. Yeah. Like, the 2 days after isn't going to be as important when someone was, like, eating cereal.
Yeah.
Or dead.
I mean...
face down in a bowl of cereal.
Because they had a heart attack while eating their cereal. The Apocalypse had nothing to do with it. That would have happened anyways. Because they didn't watch their cholesterol.
I'm gonna leave it at that. I do think this is an impressive album.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, going through it, I was gonna give this like a 7. I think I was gonna give it 7+. But like thinking about how it built atmosphere and the performances throughout and things I like of this nature, it fits that niche pretty well. It's something post-rocky not a post-rock album, but something of that. that area, that zip code, that tri-state area that is post-rock.
Yeah, but it's like
something near that.
It's right on the edge. It's got a house right next to Swans.
It has to pay for business tax and home tax.
Yeah, because they got fucked over by where they built their land.
But keep in mind, I did enjoy this. Keep in mind, on scores for you telling me this right now. I'm feeling right now at this current moment, I'm thinking this is like an A-.
This is like a 9 to me.
Yeah,
I think
that's fine. That's album. Personally, I think it has those points, but to me, it just doesn't.
Essential project.
Yeah, I would still give it an essential project. Even if it was 7+, I would still give it an essential project because I think there's groundbreaking material on here. And that's it. This has been a really long episode of the Anthony Todd Show.
We're fucking Wrekmeister Harmonies and fucking Ozzy Osbourne, two of like the most different things that like are still kind of technically within some of the same genre molds. This is a weird week.
Same thing to me. It's 8-.
It's a weird fucking week.
Get to the same holes by being the same. Ozzy Osbourne, Wrekmeister Harmonies, same thing.
On that note, I'm gonna go cry.
Okay. Until next time, guys, you want to follow us on social media. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Anthony Todd. You can find us at youtube.com/The Anthony Todd Show. You can find us Podbean, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, Spotify, Tinder, Tumblr.
You have a Tinder.
WebMe, LinkedIn, and whatever is your favorite podcast browser.
We don't have Tumblr anymore. They got rid of porn. What's the point?
Whatever is your favorite podcast browser, just search
we moved to Pornhub.
Whatever your favorite Anthony and Todd, or what is your favorite podcast service? You can search the Anthony and Todd Show.
On Pornhub.
People put Vine sauce videos on Pornhub, and they get a good amount of views.
Let's put them on Pornhub.
No.
Let's monetize them.
No, I don't want to.
This is how we make money.
I don't get computer virus. I can't get computer virus.
Pornhub's like the only safe like porn site you can go to without getting a virus.
I don't like it. Their pop-up links.
Oh yeah, that's kind of annoying.
That's why I don't do it. I do it on my phone like an adult. It's the digital age.
Look,
man.
we don't have to use we don't have to go watch our videos on Pornhub.
I know, but you still have to use the interface that has all the ads.
Just get ad blocker.
No, that's for losers. I want to support my fellow Pornhub artists. These Pornhub's masterpiece makers, these Pornhub chefs over here. I want to support their.
Is there a cooking channel on Pornhub? I feel like there has to be.
No, I was talking about how sex is a cooking act in itself.
Is it?
Because you gotta be. You can't just go in and rush it. You have to. There's like fast food level sex, and then there's like masterpiece level sex.
Okay, what is your masterpiece level Pornhub video?
I don't know.
Because now I'm curious.
I don't think I have one, but I think there is one.
All right, so
I think it would be perfectly.
On next week's Is It a Film?
I'm not doing research for that.
Vincent finds and we review his masterpiece level Pornhub video. His 5-star Michelin restaurant Pornhub video.
Did you guys watch in one of your film classes Pornhub? Or you didn't watch Pornhub? You watched it on like Porn Cow or something like that?
Oh, I think they might have in like the cinema and sexuality class. But
you weren't.
I wasn't in that class.
Yeah. Anything else? Oh, you can find me at Twitter at Vincent Short. The Vincent Short. You can find me at Instagram at Vincent Thomas Short.
Why are you plugging yourself?
Because I'm cool. You can also find my new album, my compilation. It's not an album. I don't consider it an album, even though technically it's an album. It might be up by the time this is, but it should be up on iTunes, Apple Music, and Spotify under the name Vincent Thomas Short. So if you want to find that, you can. You can find him on Instagram at animated.
It's like one's animated JKR and the other one's animation JKR.
Why do you do that? You need
because to have one of them I didn't have like enough room to do animation, so I had to shorten it somehow. Because there is no God.
I'm not going to give you time to figure it out.
Hang on.
You have to figure it out before I hit the outro.
I'm just trying to remember what.
It's a test. It's a game.
Yeah. So on Twitter, it's animated JKR. Animating Jonathan is my Instagram. Both you can just search my name, Jonathan Reeser, and you'll find it.
Okay. Until next time, guys. Watch Pornhub 10 out of 10 masterpieces. I don't know. I don't really have a word.
Comment your Pornhub masterpieces on our videos. Just give us the title, maybe.
No, don't.
Don't give us links.
Yeah, don't give us links.
I'm pretty sure that
would. But vivid descriptions would be nice.
Yeah. Let me know what I'm getting into.
See you guys next week.
See ya.